where did this curiosity, this fascination with sound and meditation, where did it come from?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Well, I try to have some of those deep questions. So,
Because sound has been used for thousands of years in traditions all around the world. So it's is believed that, the Tibetans were using their singing bowls for countless eons of time. They're not exactly sure when singing bowls were produced. We connect them with the Tibetan tradition because when China sort of invaded Tibet, all these monks were fleeing and they brought these bowls with them, and so they came to Western consciousness, and we call them Tibetan bowls. But they believe they're as ancient as bells, and bells go back in China for thousands of years. They've archaeologists have found some bells that are like 4,000, 5,000 years old. So even in Asian cultures, bells and singing bowls and these little tingshes have been used as a way to clear space, to meditate on, to focus on. It's believed that in the ancient Egyptian civilization that they were using sound through vocal tonings and certain instruments in some of the temples that they had used back then in order to help get into deeper states and bring well-being to a body. Hindus have used mantras, which are sounds, and there's a whole area of yoga called Nada Yoga, which is the yoga of sound. So thousands of for or I should say for civilizations for thousands of years have been using sound as an object to not only meditate on but to bring well-being. Now, in terms of modern society, these things that I'm doing now called sound baths have become more popular over the last 5, 10 years. So they're sort of a newer thing that's coming to Western consciousness, but civilizations were using sound in that way long before we are now in group settings of using singing bowls or didgeridoos. It's believed that didgeridoos in Australia are 10,000 years old. And if you're not
really?
familiar, yeah, if any of your listeners are not familiar with didgeridoos, they're these long, it's like a sort of hollowed out tree trunk or branch that they blow in and makes a low droning sound. And according to the Aboriginal traditions, they're at least 10,000 years old.
Wow, that I did not know. Now I'm very familiar with the idea with the using harmonics and frequencies and things like that in ancient Egypt. I've had a few conversations with people from the area, especially John Van
Yes.
Auken, and we
Yeah.
talked about how they were using them in their Temple Beautiful, and they
Temple
were
Beautiful.
yeah, they were using it for regeneration and stuff like that. And one of the famous stories from that was about Edgar Casey's past life as Rata, regenerating himself from an old man to a young man just by using sound and vibration. Was
Yes.
that's kind of like the Cole's Note version of, but that was basically the idea of that. So how profound that is. So with your practice of like that, I mean, you started out originally in medicine.
I did.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you go from working in medicine and then all of a sudden I want to go to India and Tibet? So where did that change?
There were multiple factors that piled on with that decision, but one of the main motivating factors was the idea that, according to the American Medical Association, when I was in school, the research was saying nearly 80% of all illness and disease, the underlying root cause of it was stress. Now, sadly, a more recent study in 2021 has been published, which says that now 90% of all doctor and hospital visits worldwide are stress related. 90% of them.
Wow.
And so I just was not fully understanding then, as I was going through the education and the schooling, why we're just really symptom focused. Why are we just focusing on symptoms if so much illness and disease is due to stress and we're not getting to that underlying root cause? Are we, ideally really helping the person to heal? In my mind, it was not, because if you have a stressor that's creating some symptom and I just write a prescription or do something to take the symptom away, which of course you want to do to help the patient move through life with a little bit more ease and comfort. But in my mind, you don't want to leave it there. Because if you don't get to the underlying root cause, the stressor says, hey, you didn't do anything about me at all, except just cut off the way I was expressing myself. And if I can't express myself through that symptom anymore, I'm going to have to now make a new avenue of expression and create a new symptom, disease, or illness in another place. And so I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to help patients get to the underlying root cause of the illness. Since so much illness and disease was due to stress, I said to myself, okay, then I'm going to start focusing more heavily on stress management, relaxation responses, look into all of these modalities and tools and tips and methods and tricks that can really help us to de-stress ourselves because of so much illness and disease and doctor visits. That's the underlying root cause. Then that's where I want to focus my attention. And I knew how much meditation and mindfulness practices were helping me already because I was practicing prior to entering medical school. And one of the things I can fall back on is having my meditation practice to help me through the stress of first year medical school and so on and so forth. And so I said, all right, I'm going to focus more heavily on these methods because why I got onto the meditation path was for personal spiritual reasons. I was dabbling in meditation for a deeper connection to what I still call God, but
Okay.
it wasn't for, the stress reduction or anything like that. Those were wonderful side effects, but since it had so much um, benefit for me in stressful situations, I said, all right, let me start looking at this more from a scientific perspective, not just a spiritual practice. I began to devour all the medical research and articles I could find at the time. And so I began to really hone in on that and see the benefit it has. And, Harvard and Yale and Duke have done studies and replicable studies where multiple universities have redone the same study and came to the same conclusion about the benefit of meditation and all these wonderful, you know, aspects it could have, like increasing, our immune system, decreasing blood pressure, and so on and so forth. So I said, all right, I'm going to start really focusing my attention on stress. And that's when I decided if I'm going to move in the direction of learning, like the stress response with Dr. Benson of Harvard and mindfulness techniques and meditation techniques, then I better learn as many as I can. Because if I only know one method, it's not going to be able to help all the different minds that are out there. So that's when I decided to go live as a monk for a while, studying Tibetan meditations, Buddhist meditations, Hindu Vedic meditations, spent some time in a monastery in Assisi, Italy, studying contemplative prayer, centering prayer, Lectio Divina, which would be called methods of Christian meditative or contemplative practices. That way, I have a vast variety of tools at my disposal for all the different people that might be coming to me.
Okay.
Because, some people might be coming for spiritual reasons, and then if they come out of a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist tradition, I can help them there. But some people might just be coming for, more of the stress reduction, help with anxiety, getting their mind under control, where they're not really as interested in a spiritual dynamic, but more of a physical, emotional, mental dynamic. And so I have secular tools at my disposal as well.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
how
could
I
be
actually.
very, very profound because there's so much dogma around that, and so much can be blocked just because, like, oh my God, that's woo woo, man. I don't want anything to do that. But if you have the kind of the holistic science background of it, it makes it a little bit more palatable to some people who are not Christian based or spiritual based. But having those extra tools in your toolbox is a profound thing. Like, I mean, that is in itself just the learning curve and understanding that can make a profound difference on the individuals you're working with.
Oh, absolutely. And, to be honest, there are some people that get into it simply for they come and first they're like, I don't really have any spiritual intention with this. I just want to learn how to get, this chaotic mind that I have under control. But then as they begin to practice with it, it opens up a dimension to them where they feel more connected to something and it inspires a spiritual sort of resurgence or revival in their life. So that's a very interesting dynamic to see as well.